You slept 7 or 8 hours. Technically, you did everything right. And yet when your eyes open, your mind feels thick. Not exhausted exactly, just unclear. There is a slight heaviness behind your forehead, a quiet resistance to beginning. Before you even sit up, you already feel a step behind the day. Almost automatically, your hand reaches for your phone. The light hits your eyes. Notifications, messages, headlines, small fragments of other people's lives rush toward you. Within seconds, your mind is comparing, reacting, planning, calculating. The morning does not unfold gently. It crashes into you. Instead of waking up, you are pulled outward. It is easy to blame yourself for this fog. You might think you need more discipline. You might believe you should wake earlier, push harder, optimize your routine. But morning heaviness is not laziness. It is often nervous system overload. Your brain is shifting from sleep to alertness, and instead of allowing that transition, you flood it with stimulation. There is something called the cortisol awakening response, a natural rise in alertness hormones that helps you become conscious. When you immediately introduce dopamine spikes from screens, combined with emotional triggers from messages or news, the system becomes chaotic. Add sleep inertia, that groggy state where the brain is not fully online, and you have mental turbulence before your day even begins. In many Japanese homes, mornings follow a quiet rhythm, shakti, not rushed, not loud. There are rituals, opening curtains, folding futons, preparing tea, small actions performed with steadiness. The morning is treated as alignment, not reaction. It is a transition space between sleep and society. You do not need to wake up at 5 in the morning. You do not need a dramatic routine. You need to wake differently. Clear mornings are not about effort. They are about protection. Mental clarity at the start of the day is not forced. It is designed. The first habit is simple, but it feels almost radical in modern life. Do not begin your day with input. The moment you open your eyes, your brain is still emerging from sleep. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning, decision-making, and emotional regulation, is not fully active yet. And yet most people immediately flood it with information. You open your phone, you read messages, you scan emails, you check headlines. Within seconds, your mind is reacting. You are already comparing yourself to others, anticipating tasks, feeling subtle pressure. The day has not begun internally, but externally it is demanding your attention. This early input creates a fragile start. Before your brain has stabilized, it is forced into evaluation mode. Stress hormones activate prematurely. Your nervous system shifts from rest to alertness without a smooth transition. Even if nothing dramatic appears on your screen, the act of scanning itself consumes cognitive resources. The result is a sense of being mentally scattered before you have even stood up. In many Japanese households, mornings are quieter. Conversation is minimal. Television is often off. The first minutes are reserved for simple physical actions: opening windows, letting in natural light, washing the face, preparing tea or breakfast. There is a buffer between waking and the outside world. That buffer protects clarity. You can experiment with protecting the first 15 minutes of your morning from digital input. Leave your phone in another room if possible. When you wake, sit up slowly. Let natural light reach your eyes before artificial light. Feel the air. Notice your breathing. It may feel uncomfortable at first because you are used to stimulation, but discomfort is simply your brain recalibrating. Those first minutes are your mental runway. If you fill them with noise, takeoff is turbulent. If you protect them, your mind stabilizes gradually. Clarity does not require more effort. It requires guarding the first window of consciousness. When you protect the first mental space of your day, you begin from alignment instead of reaction. And that small shift changes the tone of everything that follows. The second habit is about how you move in the first moments after waking. Most people jolt themselves into the day. The alarm rings, and they sit up abruptly. Feet hit the floor quickly. Within minutes, they are walking, talking, checking devices. The body accelerates before the brain has completed its transition. Sleep inertia is real. When you wake, parts of your brain are still in a low-activity state. If you force immediate action, you create friction. The nervous system shifts from deep rest to full alertness too quickly. That abrupt activation often feels like mental fog, irritability, or subtle anxiety. In traditional Japanese homes, especially those with futons, waking often involves a gentle sequence. You sit up slowly. You fold the futon with deliberate movements. You open the room to air. These actions are not rushed. They act as a bridge between sleep and wakefulness. The body transitions first, then the mind follows. You can create a similar transition even in a modern setting. When you wake, sit upright in bed and remain still for 60 seconds. Do not reach for anything. Place your feet on the floor and take one slow breath in through your nose. Just then exhale fully. Let your eyes adjust to the light. This minute may feel insignificant, but it signals to your nervous system that the shift from rest to activity is controlled. That slow transition reduces the shock to your system. Instead of launching into the day, you enter it. And when the body feels less rushed, the mind feels less cloudy. The third habit involves simplifying your morning decisions. One of the quietest drains on mental clarity is early decision-making. Stack multiple decisions immediately after each other. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a mistake. When you stack multiple decisions immediately after each other, you're more likely to make a stack multiple decisions immediately after waking. Your brain becomes fatigued before the day truly starts. In Japan, uniform culture is common in schools and many workplaces. Predictable breakfast patterns are normal. Routines repeat. This consistency is not about lack of creativity. It is about preserving mental bandwidth. When clothing is pre-decided or meals are consistent, the mind does not need to negotiate at dawn. You can apply this principle by choosing a fixed breakfast for weekdays. Pre-select your clothes the night before. Establish a simple order for your morning tasks and follow it without debate. The fewer choices you make while your brain is still waking, the clearer it remains. Fewer early decisions mean fewer cognitive interruptions, and fewer interruptions mean less morning fog. When your first hour contains less negotiation, your mind has space to settle. Clear mornings are not about doing more. They are about removing friction before it accumulates. The fourth habit is about light. Many people wake under artificial lighting, harsh overhead bulbs, or the glow of a screen. Artificial light tells your brain to be alert, but it does not align with your natural circadian rhythm. Natural light, especially in the early morning, sends a different signal. It gently informs your body that the day has begun. Your circadian rhythm is regulated largely by light exposure. When natural light enters your eyes shortly after waking, it helps suppress melatonin and stabilize cortisol levels in a balanced way. Without this signal, your body can remain in a half-awake state longer than necessary. The result feels like lingering fog. In traditional Japanese homes, shoji screens diffuse sunlight softly into the room. The morning often begins with opening a window or sliding a door to let natural light and air enter. Even small balconies become spaces for stepping into daylight briefly. These subtle rituals recalibrate the body without force. You do not need a dramatic sunrise ritual. Simply expose yourself to natural light within the first 10 minutes of waking. Stand near a window. Step outside for 5 minutes. Let the light reach your eyes without sunglasses if possible. This small act resets your internal clock more effectively than checking your phone ever could. Light does not just wake your eyes, it wakes your mind. The fifth habit is protecting solitude before social interaction. Many mornings begin with conversation, messages, or immediate collaboration. Social cognition requires energy. Interpreting tone, responding appropriately, engaging in dialogue, all of it consumes glucose and attention. If your first mental activity is social engagement, your internal space disappears quickly. Instead of building clarity internally, you are responding externally. In Japan, quiet commutes are common. Trains are often silent. Many people begin their day with solitary rituals, preparing tea, reading briefly, walking quietly. This protects mental solitude before entering social environments. You can create a small pocket of silence before speaking to anyone. Perform one quiet task alone, making your bed, washing your face slowly, preparing coffee without distraction. Avoid starting your day with conversation or digital messaging if possible. Even 10 minutes of protected solitude stabilizes your internal state. When you guard that mental space, your thoughts organize themselves. You begin the day from within rather than from reaction. Clear-minded mornings are built on gentle transitions. No immediate input, slow physical awakening, simplified decisions, natural light, and protected solitude. Each one reduces friction. Each one lowers noise. The sixth habit concerns your first thoughts. Many people begin the day by reviewing problems. The moment they wake, they mentally rehearse unfinished tasks, conflicts, worries. This creates immediate tension. Your nervous system cannot differentiate between imagining stress and experiencing it. The body responds either way. In Japanese philosophy, there is an acceptance mindset, acknowledging what exists without dramatizing it. Instead of beginning with evaluation, the day can begin with neutrality. You can choose a simple, neutral first sentence upon waking. Something steady, like, "Today begins calmly," or "one step at a time." This is not forced positivity. It is directional focus. It prevents your mind from spiraling into analysis before you are fully alert. Your first thought sets tone. When it is neutral and grounded, clarity has room to grow. The seventh habit is a micro-clean reset. Visual clutter influences mental clarity more than most people realize. When your environment is chaotic, your brain continues scanning for unfinished tasks. Even small disorder creates subtle tension. In Japan, order is often maintained through small daily resets. Bedding is folded. Surfaces are cleared. Objects are placed intentionally. This is not perfectionism. It is environmental calm. You can begin with a 3-minute reset each morning. Smooth your bed. Clear one surface. Align one small space. The act itself is regulating. It signals completion. It reduces visual noise. When your external environment feels slightly ordered, your internal state follows. Clarity grows in spaces that are not overstimulating. The eighth habit centers on breath. Before your day accelerates, anchor your nervous system. Breath is the most immediate tool available to you. Slow, rhythmic breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, calming the body and sharpening attention. In Zen practice, breath awareness is foundational. Even a few cycles of controlled breathing create presence. You can try a simple pattern. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Exhale for 6. Repeat 5 times. This slows your heart rate and steadies your mind. Clear mornings are not about productivity. They are about alignment. Reduced friction, gentle transitions, and protected mental space create clarity without force. You do not need a 5 a.m. miracle routine. You need safety for your nervous system. When the body feels unhurried and unstimulated at the start of the day, the mind organizes itself. The way you wake determines the way you think.